everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Dad with me and Nate. Nate, how are you doing today? It's August. It is a new month. My garden is absolutely fucked this year, but that's okay.
I haven't gone out in the garden in so long because I'm just so busy with other things. I do a little bit of cleanup at some point, but like I don't care at this point, man. It's such a mess. It's always been a mess. It's just weed hell. I'm just gonna hire a gardener to clean it out before we hand the keys back to the landlord when we leave.
Yeah, my gardens have been completely overgrown, and I have tomatoes growing though, but they're all tomatoes from last year, like they're volunteer tomatoes. So inside of this bed of weeds, I have these tomato stalks growing up too. So at least I'm going to get some cherry tomatoes out of this year, and I got my garlic, but that's about it. Everything else has been kind of fucked.
We leave in less than 2 weeks.
Right? You don't give a shit.
Like we're not moving in the sense of like the movers. That's happening later. I have to get Cynthia and our daughter situated in Geneva, and then I'll come back and deal with movers and donations and trash removal and all that cleaning, all that crap. But in terms of like planting stuff in the garden, it's like, yeah, it'd be nice. I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like I've had there's lots of good memories with this house and lots of big milestones that are huge and important for us, and I'm happy where we are in terms of how we're leaving. But like I don't like this house at all. It sucks. It's annoying. It's basically everything's falling apart. Everything's badly done. Everything's kind of dangerous. There's so many tripping hazards, so many just cheap, flimsy, badly done stuff. I'm just like, I am so tired of this stupid house. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad to be leaving. I never want to rent again just because I never want to deal with somebody else's bullshit. I prefer all of this to be my bullshit. And don't get me wrong, that comes with a lot of problems as well, because when something breaks, it's on you to fix it. And when something $10,000 breaks, that's on you to fix it. But also at the same time, when something breaks, I don't have to deal with, like, I can replace my own doors if I want. I can paint the walls if I want. I can drill holes into shit and nobody's going to give me any problems with it. So it's because we've been talking back and forth, I know, on the show about us moving and what we want. And now our current thing is that interest rates are so fucked at the moment in the United States that even if we did, we would get a good profit selling our house now. But of course, that means we would have to buy a more expensive house at a higher rate now. And we don't want to do that. So now we're looking at getting an equity loan so that we can build out the basement, because our basement is completely unfinished. So, and we need office space. We both work from home, trying to expand, the store and the podcast. And my wife is trying to expand her thing. So there's a lot going on back and forth. And I like the idea of doing the basement because we can kind of do that ourselves. It's not hard to frame stuff up and throw up drywall, but I don't know. Who knows? My wife will change her mind again in 2 weeks. So who knows? I have had an interesting experience because I spent this weekend doing a ton of work at the studio. I actually had planned this for a while. This was like the fourth scheduled date of doing the Saturday job with my friend to try to get this console table built. And it finally happened. And
it looks good.
Like,
good.
I'm really, really happy with it.
It looks solid. Looks like you could, if you tried to powerbomb somebody on top of it, it wouldn't break in half.
Yeah, but there is a problem. It's not a problem in terms, it's very sturdy. I designed it and I'm very happy with the design, but also like a lot of the design comes from the idea of like buying standard size planed all round lumber and cutting lengths of it and making things out of those lengths. So like you're framing up a table with 2x4s, making an apron. I made the legs out of 2x6s, two 2x6 boards mated together with pocket screws. I would have glued them, but I just didn't have time or space to do that. And then basically the feet are very, very wide, and the feet are basically 2 pieces of 2x4. And then you've got M10 or so 10 millimeter bolts, carriage bolts, bolting all 3 together to hold the leg stems, column with feet on either side. So it's got a big footprint, a deep footprint, and then very, very long table. I mean, the table is like, I think 285 centimeters. So it's extremely large, but it's the tabletop I had made because similarly, the amount of money it would have cost me to buy enough bar clamps to successfully mate that many long pine boards and have them be smooth. Never mind that I'd have to sand it, probably have to plane it if I'm using planed all, because a lot of this lumber, no matter how it's planed all around, but it's fucking warped at that length.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they made it for me. And I was like, hi, I want 2-inch thick tabletop, or 1.5, I can't remember, 1.5 inch or 2-inch thick tabletop. These dimensions, and it was like 300 pounds, whereas I would have needed at least 10 bar clamps, and good bar clamps are like 35 pounds each.
Yeah,
so it's like,
that's not...
already it's cheaper. Never mind the time, the space, all the shit.
And it's good to have just one solid piece too.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's not. I mean, in the sense that it's multiple boards that have been glued, but it's been done correctly. It's been done in a way where like you I think it's every 12 inches, so every 25 centimeter or 30 centimeters, you're supposed to have bar clamps, holding under pressure for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sand it. It's been sanded. It's been smoothed over. Everything. Like it's good. It looks like it's not butcher block because it's not the treatment on top of it. There's no seal. It's untreated or unfinished wood. But that tabletop goes on top of those legs I've just described and that apron frame. There's you framed up basically the cross pieces, and then there's 2 additional cross pieces in the at like 1/3, 2/3 mark inside that frame. So like there's stuff holding that frame together, giving it tension, not just at the corners. And then basically the way that we decided to make the cross pieces was to, once we had the legs complete and we framed it up, we made sure that like it actually was already pretty snug and tight on the width of the feet, like the pillar, without needing to like really pull it in or anything. Just like the idea was, okay, we have the design, it should be 30 centimeters, but it might be a little different because the legs were actually planed and like I don't know what it's actually going to be. So let's make the concept is the same as on paper, but like let's actually make the measurements based on what the dimensions of the feet are, so that it's snug. And then you connect the frame with pocket screws, so it's really tight against it. We used corner braces to secure the tabletop and the frame and the legs together. And I don't know, I got to think about it in terms of timing, but one thing I'm going to try to do is drive some carriage bolts into basically the very, very top of the sort of foot pillar into the frame that way. So like horizontally into the frame. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure that it's not too long, or maybe I should just use wood screws because like it's solid as is, but like obviously that gives it a little more sturdiness. But with carriage bolts with wood like that, you start driving it in, there's a possibility that you can crack it. So I definitely don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And then the one last thing I say about the design is, honestly, I can send you, I think I texted you pictures of it. We can put it online if you wanted to see it. We have a cross piece, like a cross support at the back. So that is like the full span between the legs at the back of the table. It's about 2 centimeters in from the edge because I didn't want it to be so close to the edge of the leg boards, the 2x6 boards, that like it might split. Mm-hmm. And then it's basically connected with pocket screws, and then it's also connected to the center supports that I was describing, the cross supports in the frame with little quarter inch bracket or 2-inch right angle brackets.
Mm-hmm. The L brackets.
L brackets, like four wood screws total connecting the cross piece, the cross support, and basically the cross support pieces in the apron frame and the cross basically back kind of cross piece that connects the legs. So yeah, like when you think about it that way, you've got 2 pocket screws on either side, I think it is. Yeah, 2 pocket screws on either side, like 1.5-inch pocket screws connecting it into the legs, and then 4 wood screws as points of attachment connecting it into the apron. So like it's, when we turned the table over finally, at first we did it and we're like, fuck, we were doing this kind of like figure it out conceptually, and we realized like we're going to have to rotate this whole goddamn table around the studio, the control room, and there's no room. And so I was like, look, dude, let's go. We need to eat. It's late at night. Let's have dinner and then let's finish. And after eating, I was like, dude, you know what we should just do? Is literally just reverse it, unscrew the cross piece, put it in the other way, and then we just flip the table up and it's there. We don't have to turn anything around. We did that. I'm like, no one's going to notice the little screw holes. It's on the underside of the table, but that'll save us having to basically like do fucking big tango with a basically 10-foot table. 285 centimeters is, I mean, it's not quite 10 feet. It's probably like 8 or 9 feet. It's a big table. 285 centimeters. I don't know what that is in feet. I just know it in cm.
It is 112 inches.
So it's not too far off 10. It's basically it's 9'4". So it's long. It's so we did that and we put it, and we're like, I got to be honest with you, like I was nervous because the saw that is owned by one of my co-hosts, who I won't name, is a fucking piece of shit. It's like the cheapest miter saw you can find, and it's very, very, even with clamping, even with bracing, it feels as though it is impossible to ensure that it is actually cutting at 0 angle, like at a straight angle. Like it's such a piece of, so we got these stupid wobbly cuts. Like it was obviously it's a miter saw. So like with long boards, you have to flip the board around. Finally, at the end, we're like, you know what? Do the best you can with a miter saw, then finish it with a handsaw and sanding. And like it worked. But like, obviously I know if we could have completely squared off these boards, it would have been better. It would be more secure. But like, I don't have a table saw. I'm not going to buy a table saw. We don't have room for
right
one.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I get a workshop, then hell yeah, why not? But
I'm looking at buying a table saw because I'm doing. I had to make feet. So we have these grid boards. It's basically if you're hanging stuff, like if you're at a vendor event or somebody, or like if you're at a convention or something, and those big, like they're flat, they're made out of wire, they've got big squares all over them. I had to make feet for those out of some scrap wood that I have, and it was like one of those is like, all right, this will be fine, but also I can just buy the feet. Like I can get 3 sets of feet for like $50 on Amazon. So once I got a little bit of money, I'm going to end up buying that. But I am in the same kind of place where it's just like, I have a couple of shitty saws. I cannot cut a straight line to ever save my life. I've never been able to, especially with the hand saw. With a circular saw, I can get a little bit closer, but like a actual table saw will let me, put it and get a nice flat cut. And you get something on Facebook Marketplace, you can find them like for $40 or $50. So, but I gotta clean the fucking garage out to make sure that I've got space for that before I can do all of that. So that's all of that kind of future stuff. And I have a lot of other projects that are happening before that. And who knows, I might have to drywall my whole basement. So I don't, you just need 2x4s for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that obviously, like as long as the 2x4s or 4x4s or whatever you're using aren't warped or messed up, and I mean, and like I'm sure at British hardware stores and lumber yards, like if I had a car, you could go and you can buy. I mean, because I've gone with Milo before to buy boards for making acoustic treatments at the studio. So obviously for me, it was different because I needed to find a place that would ship to the studio because it would be too much. Some of the stuff was just too long to have in a car. You
can't put a 9-foot long chunk of wood.
Yeah, I mean remember the tabletop got delivered by the wood shop, but it was one big thing. So like it got delivered in a specialty van, like what they call a Luton van, like a big moving van, and then this stuff came on a flatbed truck, and it's just, I mean, there were so many times when we wanted to have it done, and it's humbling when I was unpacking it and realizing that the lumber had shipped on February 15th and it had taken this long. But like every time that we had scheduled to work on it, something happened. Like I got sick, or Cynthia got sick, or my daughter got sick, or my friend got sick, and it just over and over and over again. And it just felt like this, because the reason I realized I was so excited about my table, I didn't explain why I built it. In our control room at the studio, we have basically this long wall space, and then there's an acoustic window you can look into the live room. And I bought an old analog recording console because it's not like a SSL or a Neve or any of these like super insane vintage pricey ones. It's an old 90s Allen and Heath one. And a friend of mine runs a modular synthesizer company and recommended, he's like, if you can find GS3000s, they sound amazing. Obviously don't buy one if the whole thing has to be recapped and restored, but like if it's in pretty good shape, like they have some really great preamps. So they have Americans will be called tube amps, or the Brits call valve amps or valve drive. It's got 2 tube channels that can sound nuts, and just in general it's got basic MIDI machine control, so like you can interface it with modern software. It's not the same as like a USB-C plug-in interface to control the software, but you can control Ableton with it. You can arm and mute tracks in Ableton with it. You can play, start records that are on it. So like I wouldn't necessarily want to have it be the only control surface I used for software, but it can't, I mean, because it's 90s MIDI technology, but it does work, as opposed to like a real fully completely analog pre-MIDI one where like everything is manual. And so I saw a dude selling one, and he just, for local pickup only, for 750 pounds. And so I was like, yeah, fuck it, we'll get that. We took it to an Allen and Heath repair shop, like an authorized place, and they looked at it, and they had to make some repairs and some part swaps because it had bad part replacements done over the years. It was probably 98, 99. Like it's new enough that you can find the like terrible Web 1.0 advertisement or like brochure websites for this thing,
right? But
it's old enough that it doesn't have any digital signal processing or any, like it's a fully analog console. But these things probably cost we bought a 24 track. They probably cost 15 to 17,000 pounds new.
Oh wow!
And so obviously 750 is very low for it. But the reason why nobody wants these things is because there are certain brands of analog recording stuff that like have a really high cachet because like they're famous sort of big names for audio, or like they're seen as being really great quality. In Britain, that is, I think it stands for Solid State Logic. It's SSL, and then Rupert Neve, and then in the US it's API. But there's a lot of these things, right? API famously made the analog console that like Fleetwood Mac's Rumors was recorded on, stuff that. So you've got these kind of like they have a lot of like boomer music cachet that makes them valuable. But most of these things don't have that, and analog tech is just kind of annoying for a lot of reasons. There's ways to make it sound amazing, but everything's got to be calibrated. Lots more things can break, which is not to say digital's better in that regard, but like it depending on if stuff is supported or not. A lot of these things are so old. Either the companies, if they do exist, they don't service them anymore. They don't offer parts for deprecated models. You know what I mean? So like, it's cool, but it's expensive, it's big, it's inefficient. Like, you know, it's like retro gaming sounds cool as fuck, but when you're actually like configuring all the menu things on a goddamn Super Nintendo controller, you're reminded that like there are some things about modern things that I like as well. I've become accustomed to iPhone. You know what I mean?
Right. I've become accustomed to plug and play that actually works. You plug it in, it says, yes, I know what this is, and it's going to work perfectly fine.
The reason I got it was because I wanted us to be able to record music in the studio and also use something that would kind of like, it's very good to work with these things because it has so much of the stuff that you would then later on in software, you'll like toggle or do settings and whatever for music production and recording. In the olden days with these things, it had to all be done. Like every channel has to have these buttons. So you have to kind of like learn a lot of functions. Like there's a lot of things that are kind of like essentials in this stuff or like sort of fundamentals. And you learn a lot of that very fast trying to, you know, track on a thing where everything has to be manually set.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if we were going to record something that had a lot of mics all at once, this is an opportunity to do it. And also just like, you know, like I said, my friend was like, honestly, dude, it's cool if you can get one. And I mean, I was in another professional recording studio recently and the guy was like, we have this really cool console and we never actually use it. It just looks professional. So everyone's like, oh, cool, it's a music studio. Because I'll explain later, but there's just some stuff that the way things are done now, like it doesn't really lend itself to that stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I didn't want to spend an arm and a leg on it. So, you know, spent probably the equivalent of about $1,500 as a business expense between the pickup and the
repairs.
The repairs. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and we brought it back in like the first week of January and then it felt like everyone just got sick. Like I remember Cynthia got food poisoning or had like a kidney stone the day we were coming back with it from the repair shop.
Oh, Jesus.
And it just felt like everything just always fucking throwing curveballs at me and not being able to get this done. And so like, I'm not going to get everything that I want done before we fly in 2 weeks, but I have to come back a few times to help kind of close things out. And I have confidence I'll actually get that done. I also installed a fucking ceiling base trap into a slab concrete ceiling with a SDS drill. And so it's just like, I feel like you work on a coal face just covered in dust. Yeah. Like, you know, so
breathing all that shit in.
I definitely feel like, yeah, I got like full DIY hardcore dad weekend brownie points for this. You know, I got my cutting lumber merit badge. I got my building your own furniture and it's not a piece of shit merit badge.
Mm-hmm. Useful table building.
Yeah, so this table takes advantage of the huge space against the wall there for basically to be able to fit the console, but also to fit the computer setup and the monitor. We're probably going to retool how some things work, but like the current mixer we use for this podcast recording, have it all fit and then also have the ability to have two people seated there comfortably to work, have the under desk space used for stuff like equipment racks, and just kind of get it more professional and purpose built in the space versus like what we've had to this point, which is just like we've just been collecting random shit for years because like it was just what we needed at the time and the space was what we had at the time, and now we finally have the ability to like plan for it.
Right, buy what you want, buy what you need,
and in this case, build what you need. Because if I were to get something like this built, to customize it to the specs of what I want for the space would be insanely expensive. But even a stock version of this kind of furniture from manufacturers would have been £2,000 to £3,000.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Now, granted, it would have a finish. It wouldn't be fucking just bare, lumber and stuff. But I probably spent about 150 pounds on lumber. The tabletop was like 300 pounds. I did have to spend probably about 200-ish pounds on tools that I didn't have. I didn't have pocket hole jigs, which I don't know if you've ever used. My dad recommended them, and a lot of the stuff I remember my dad doing, building furniture and the way he would do things. So like that, I wasn't coming into it completely blind, but man, we'll talk about later. If you're doing any kind of doesn't need to be fancy carpentry, just needs to be sturdy joinery, pocket hole cutters are.
Oh yeah. You can get one for
phenomenal.
You can get one for pretty cheap too.
Kreg is the brand, the brand that I use, KREG.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that.
And I think it's an American brand, but they sell them here. And yeah. I mean, there's some kind of annoying things you have to kind of figure out about them, but in general, I was stunned at how easy it is.
Yeah.
because you put basically this frame onto a thing and then drill into it, and it's got a stopper on the drill bit that lets you cut a pocket hole with like even like a pointy end of the cutter to like have the sort of mounting space for where the screw is going to enter, and then it gets it to the depth you need, and then the idea is that you clamp it on but also clamp your boards together so you have it right where it's going to be, and then you use a driver that comes with it to drive a square cutter screw into that hole that you've dug, and it's at the angle because it's cut it at the angle. It shapes it basically and nudges it in that angle right to kind of diagonally connect two boards and join them, and it's fucking magic.
Yeah, there's a lot of like woodworking is one of those things that seems very simple because it's, you know, you just have wood and you cut into it or you drill into it, but the amount of like tools that come along with like proper woodworking to really do it. Like if you see somebody who's like, no, I do woodworking, this is my hobby or my job or something, they're going to have a massive tool section that is going to be huge.
My dad's been doing, I mean, he can't really anymore because of Parkinson's, but he had decades of experience doing this. Like it was just a hobby, but once he retired, he did it all the time. He built all this furniture. He used to build furniture for us, like really nice finished furniture. He'd go to these like master woodworker classes. And I mean, he was never really great at like, he wasn't really going to teach you how to do it in the idea of sort of like, it's a thing that here's a project for you to do. It's more like, I'm doing this. Do you want to help me with it? So I never really built any furniture on my own, but I have a lot of experience of being the person holding the fucking, you know, my dad had a saw sled, but it wasn't a table saw sled, but it wasn't long enough to hold the board. So being the board catcher, you know, holding things down, helping clamp things, him showing how to like actually like using a mortiser and like to cut mortise and tenon joints. Like part of me is like, if I wanted to be a huge dickhead, I could actually, now that I've bolted these things together, I could actually go in and cut dowels to size and dowel the feet of the table. But I was like, you know what? No, this is this is my project. I want it to work. I don't care if it looks fancy as long as it's not dangerous. I might, if I have time at some point, put some wipe on polyurethane sealer on it, but I mean it's not meant to look fancy. It's meant to do a job. That's
you can always put a tablecloth over it too if it came down to it.
Yeah,
it's always an option.
There's one of the base traps we've got left that is going to probably the best place to put it would be to center mount it instead of horizontal mount it. So like, or instead of vertically mount it, horizontally mount it in the space in the ceiling. Like, and so to get there now would require me to drill into the ceiling and put out, you know, infinity concrete dust all over this new equipment, this equipment setup I've just put together.
Right.
I really don't want to do it.
No.
I feel like if we were going to do that, what we would probably do at some point is it might make sense to make that a project to say, okay, we are going to get this one installed. And before we do it, we're going to take some of the stuff that can be taken down. We're going to cover the stuff with rags, etc. And at that point, if we're going to clear off the desk space in order to make sure nothing gets fucked up and dirty, that would then be an opportunity. Okay, now at this point, we're done. We clean up, we sand, you know, or we, you know, we're already making a mess. Sand it, wood putty it. If there's any, there are some scuffs, I think, from the delivery even. Getting it through the building, like wood putty and sanding the scuffs, you know, put the little pocket hole covers that you can get, like where they've cut wood, you know, to be like that kind of thing, and then hit it with a couple of runs of wipe on poly or equivalent, and you know, clear coat stuff and sanding and whatnot, just to like protect it a little bit. But like it's not really like, ooh, it's not really a style thing, you know what I mean? Like I'm not really that.
Sure.
Everything we've got in this place is like butcher block tables that we more or less salvaged from a co-working space that went out of business. And then we do actually need to get office chairs because the salvaged office chairs are now falling. Every single one of them is falling apart. We have to get new ones, or at least we're going to get secondhand ones. You know what I mean? But like, these were cheap ones that had no business being salvaged, but we didn't have chairs, so we salvaged them. Sure. And now every single one of them, the arms is held on by like wraps and wraps and wraps of like fragile postal tape and duct tape. Yeah. Like they are complete pieces of garbage. They've got to go. We have a fake IKEA clone of a Herman Miller chair that the lumbar support is already broken off, and the chair like feels like a death trap. So like, we've got to get new stuff. Yeah, you know, it's a work in progress, man. Yeah, you're talking about you know, helping your dad out. My daughter has moved into the phase of I want to take things apart with a screwdriver now, and so you know, we go to secondhand stores all the time. So we've been buying her like cheap secondhand clock radios that she can take apart if she wants. But last night she was in the bath, and she likes to take hour-long baths, which whatever, it keeps her quiet and entertained in the evening.
But she came out of the bathtub and she was just like, okay, I didn't want you guys to get mad, but I broke one of the doorknobs in the bathroom. And I was like, so I go in there and she shows me that she unscrewed the doorknob from the closet, like the little bathroom closet that we have in there.
Sure, yeah.
And she was having problems getting back in. And you've replaced doorknobs before, right? Like they have those long screws. They're kind of a bitch to line up and everything. So she was just having problems with that. Yeah, and she was just like, oh, I didn't want you guys to be mad at me. I don't want to get yelled at. And like, I'm not going to yell at you for you didn't break anything. And if you're going to take a screwdriver around, you should be tightening things, not loosening them.
Yeah, also it's like, you got to understand with this, like you don't want to do this and be like, oh, isn't it fun to take the doorknob off? But like if the door is closed and you take the doorknob off, you can't get it open. Like,
right.
I mean, you can, but it's annoying. Like you don't want to be trapped in there.
No.
You're going to if you scare the hell out of your parents because they think you're in trouble and you can't open the door, then they are going to get mad at you. Mm-hmm. Whereas like, this is a thing where if you ask, hey, can we do this? Maybe we can do it together.
But let me tell you, she fucking owned the shit out of me this last week and not intentionally. And so we're leaving. She does Taekwondo on Thursdays at the YMCA. So we go to we're leaving the YMCA and our Y is kind of up on a hill. And then the parking lot has like a couple of tiered parking lots down the hill, right? So there's one stretch of parking lot and then there's some stairs that go down, there's another, and then there's another. So we're leaving and our YMCA every year has a fundraiser, and one of the fundraiser things is they auction off a parking space. Specifically, like you get this prime parking space, this family gets this parking space for the rest of the year, nobody else can park here, right? So we're leaving and there's a guy who is parked there with his car door open, and he's smoking a huge blunt, like just billowing smoke out, like while all of his kids are walking out. And like, look, I smoke weed. Like I'm not a nerd in that kind of sense, but also one, you're not supposed to, like, there are rules about don't smoke on the YMCA campus at all.
Yeah, it's a bit much, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit much. All these kids are getting out of Taekwondo. And again, like, weed's legal. I smoke weed, but I don't smoke. If he was down in one of the lower parking lots smoking weed, I wouldn't give a shit. But like, all of us have to walk by him to get to this. Weed's one of those things. It's like ultra cigars, It's like, it's a thing that is going to smell a lot. And like, especially when you're smoking a huge blunt.
Yeah, huge blunt. Exactly. Like now that it's legal, it's like you should kind of, I feel like there's a certain level of decorum required about it. In the olden days, it was just sort of like, well, yeah, the people who got mad at the smell had a recourse of calling, I mean, in Britain doesn't work, but calling the cops on you.
Sure.
But yeah, now it's just be polite about it. So
we walk by and it's just like, come on, man, why are you smoking weed out here like this? And his response is, basically, I'm an adult, I can do what I want. As it was just kind of a back and forth as we're walking by, and basically I'm calling him an asshole. He's like, yes, I'm an asshole. We move on. Now, the last thing that his parting shot to me, though, is that I should mind my own business. So half a beat later, my daughter looks at me and she's just like, you should listen to him, Dad. Also, he looks really strong. Right. And so I was just like, and at the time I was just like, whatever. Like, we weren't going to nobody was going to throw a punch over this or anything.
Sure.
But like, what, the whole, like, you're supposed to do, like, kids are supposed to, like, my dad can beat up your dad. And here's my daughter just being like, you can't beat that guy up, Dad, so you should keep your fucking mouth shut.
He's really strong. You should keep your mouth shut.
He's very big. He could probably kick your ass, and I don't want to watch my father get his ass kicked in the YMCA
but your
parking
daughter
lot.
could do some tight, like some
right.
Yellow belt, green belt taekwondo.
She's a green belt. I'm like, what the fuck? You're supposed to be my bodyguard if that guy came after me. You're supposed to
do the spinning kicks and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I had it happen recently where I had to deploy what I call New York voice, which is, I'm not a New Yorker other than like it feels like home compared to other places in America for sure. But I've lived in London far longer than I lived in New York at this point. But New York voice is kind of like the voice that you adopt where when you have to have words with people in public, and it's not trying to start a fight. It's not like being aggressively insulting. It's just letting people know, hey, come on, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, don't be an idiot.
And that is basically what I was doing, was just like, look, man, you're being an asshole. You don't belong in this parking space. I assume that you're picking up your kid as you're smoking this gigantic blunt. You're being a dick.
I have a story where I didn't necessarily hold. I very much responded like a New Yorker, but it's not necessarily a thing I would want my daughter to hear me say. This was years ago. I was riding my bike, and I think I've told the story about the junction coming off of Tower Bridge where you have to make a pretty, not hairy turn, but like you're in a cycle lane, but you are basically making the equivalent of a U.S. left-hand turn, a right-hand turn, when you have a very brief period of green arrow right of way, and you are basically on the left of a turning lane for cars doing the same thing. So a lot of cyclists don't like to respect the signal on that, so you have to check both ways to make sure people aren't running the light. You have to make sure the cars aren't confused about the do not enter sign where they would go into one other like wrong way traffic. It's kind of hairy, and so you want to get through that intersection. You're coming right off of a big intersection at the embankment, right off of the bridge. So you want to get out of that intersection, not like be crazy, but you want to be safe while you're doing it. So I was coming off this. We had the green light, and a guy was on one of these rental scooters, like not like a Vespa, but like the electric razor scooter kinds of things, one of those.
Yeah.
And he was checking his phone and not looking that the signal was green and blocking the intersection.
Ugh.
And I see it coming. I'm like, hey, light's green. And the guy's like, oh, British voice, like, oh, sorry, and like moves it slightly to the left, and I still have to go into car traffic to get around. And just New York voice. I was like, come on, man, what the fuck's wrong with you? And he was like, oh, fuck off, you twat. And like basically Alan Partridge voice. And my response was just, suck my dick. And like I said it exactly like that, like New York voice. And I was just like, that came out of nowhere. I didn't even know I had it in me. But it's one of those things where I don't want my daughter to hear that.
No, my wife is trying to not have as bad road rage. Like she doesn't drive aggressively, but she does yell at people in traffic a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of say like today I've had cycling is interesting because you can be the angry cyclist yelling at people. At the end of the day, you're a grown adult on a bike and cars can kill you. So you have to, there's a certain level of like perspective you got to keep it in. And, I sometimes have to yell at drivers, but invariably I try not to, because cars make people insane. It's a thing that makes you psychotic.
I can't, and you know what? I hate that I have, like, when we have bike lanes in our general area, and when I'm driving around and there's a bicyclist who is weaving in and out of that lane and taking a long time, I'm just, and I fully, like, 100%, we should have bike lanes. We should have protected bike lanes. We should have way more options for people to not use cars. But also, and so I know it's not the bicyclist's fault, but also at the same time, stay the fuck in your lane, dude. I am driving 1,500 pounds of plastic and aluminum. You are driving like 20 pounds of it. So fucking chill out.
I mean, I would say, so the thing about it is here that obviously between the kind of city cycle culture stuff and all of there's so many of these rental bike services, like the, on demand rental bikes, where like, it's not like what they call the Boris bikes or like this, the city bikes in New York kind of thing where they have a dock and they're regular bikes. These are pedal assist, like electric motorbikes, and you can just kind of park them. Basically the rule is like you don't park them to block pedestrians, but you can park them anywhere on the street, on the sidewalk, and as long as it's not blocking traffic, and you just come up and you scan them and you can rent them. And so I use them all the time because sometimes they're like, for example, if I'm taking the train home, the bus from here to the nearest train that will go straight to where I live is, I think it's 5 stops. And in the morning, when there's not a ton of traffic, it takes like under 10 minutes. I have had that 5 stops take 30 minutes in evening traffic because it's just a parking lot the whole way. And there are bus lanes, but that road doesn't have any bus lanes. So if there's car traffic, the bus is stuck. So like I'll rent these bikes and get around. So I'm on a bike a lot, but like I've been riding in London for 6 years and I'd like to think I have a decent amount of experience doing it. So bus lanes in London have a solid white line on them, and cars actually will get a ticket if they go into that lane. Like they're not, like taxis can use them, like registered taxis, and cyclists can use them, and buses can use them. And I think also like scooter riders and stuff, like electric scooters and motor scooters, things like that. So I was coming down Cambridge Heath Road on my way home, and a lady pulled out from basically she was making a right turn, but opposite side traffic, so it's like a big left turn. And she cuts across all the lanes of traffic and then well into the bike lane. Ooh. And I'm coming and I see it. And I'm like, man, she's not gonna look, is she? And she cuts, and I brake because I see it coming, and I brake, and then she cuts. She would have absolutely hit me. And then she has her window down, and I pull upside down. I'm like, lady, what the fuck is wrong with you? And she was like, sorry, I didn't see you. I couldn't see you. And I was just like, like I said, I try to not be too vulgar, rude. And I was just like, it's going to do me a lot of good when I die, isn't it? And like, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, like being assertive, saying the thing that needs to be said if you feel like it's appropriate, but not necessarily using fighting words or using language you're gonna regret using. You know what I mean? Either because your kid hears you or you feel like an asshole. Because I don't want to be angry man on a bike who's almost 40. I don't want to be a guy who's like saying really offensive things. You know what I mean? Like I'll get angry when people are stupid and they put my life in danger. But I don't want to. I've seen people on bikes freak out and like, you just look like a loser. You just look like it's like, brother, you are basically driving. You are driving a bit like a slightly elongated version of a big wheel. You look ridiculous losing your mind to people. Like, you just look goofy.
Yeah, you're with your little helmet on and your spandex and your little water bottle and everything. You don't cut an intimidating, like, if somebody on like and where I live in the city, most people that I see on bikes are just like people wearing regular street clothes and no helmets, and those people will absolutely fuck you up. But like any like the people who are commuting every day and having the special clothes and everything like that, I can't take you seriously.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, because like obviously there's some extent to it. Like in the Netherlands, it feels like no one wears helmets except little kids who are learning to ride. Sure. Like it's sort of assumed you don't need to. And I don't necessarily know if I agree, because like I say this as a cyclist. I say this as somebody who doesn't own a car, who's cycled. I cycled in New York and I've cycled here forever. Cyclists can be great advocates for one another. We can also be our own worst enemies, and we can also be our own worst representatives. And a lot of there are people who get like really, there's some like weird internecine squabbles about it, like arguments about it, like people basically saying that you shouldn't wear helmets because if you wear a helmet, then cars think they can drive dangerously around you, and so like they'll be more safe. I'm like, brother, they will fucking run you over. You could be wearing a suit of armor, they don't give a shit. You could be naked, they will still run you over. Like that doesn't matter. I
could be waving a gun and somebody will still just like accidentally run into me. Like, well, honestly, if I'm waving a gun, you probably should run into me.
Maybe, exactly. Solve the problem.
I also heard that you shouldn't wear a helmet because it gives you a false sense of security. Like,
right, but I have probably been, according to doctors, I have most likely been safe from a potentially fatal injury that still gave me a very severe concussion in 2019. Remember, I recorded the episode the day after, and I sounded like I was in slow-mo because I was wearing a helmet, because I landed, my front tire jammed in a rut on the pavement when I was coming up on the sidewalk to go into a parking lot where I lived, in the house where I lived, and it flung me over the handlebars backwards, and I landed on the back of my head. And so it knocked me out for a split second. The doctor said that based on where I landed, and I probably would have died, or I could have died. Sure. Basically, it's very much a how you die from a head injury instantly kind of injury. Yeah,
your head can, like, if I'm just under 6 foot, if I fell over while walking and hit my head on the concrete, that's not going to be a good day for me. Like,
no, and like it's when people die from like the sort of knockout punch kind of thing that kills you, it's often not the punch, it's that falling in backwards and hitting your head on the concrete. Yeah, that kind of a thing. And so I don't always wear a helmet. I'll admit this. When I'm commuting around the neighborhood, running errands, stuff like that, I don't really typically do it, because the helmet becomes then, when I get to where I'm doing, another thing to be annoyed with, like to hassle with, which I know is unsafe. But when I'm in major traffic, when I'm commuting to work, I always, and if I'm gonna, for example, I think I'm gonna need to ride a long distance on a rental bike, I'll bring my helmet in my bag. So I'm not blameless in this, but my sort of uniform for cycle commuting is wearing a helmet. And I would say the thing with cyclists is, like, here in London, there is decent, but not amazing infrastructure. There's far better examples of it in continental Europe, of cities like Copenhagen or countries like the Netherlands, where they've made it like integral. Here you have it, but like there's not that much. There's like people who are just tootling around on these rental bikes, who, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but they might not have that much experience. You have the kind of like, the sort of like crust punk version, like of being a cycle guy, like people who love bikes and are always on bikes, but like can be a bit crazy. Right. I mean, I'm probably closer to that. And then you have the Lycra guys. You have the tour to getting to my job guys, who are always yelling at you and always trying to pass and just being super aggressive. And they're typically like, they got little mirrors on their helmets. Yeah. And I've had to mouth off to these guys before, because people like will yell at you all the time. And I remember like passing, but trying to not pass unsafely. And a guy yelled at me and he was like, some of us trying to make the light. And I was like, oh, you're so fucking cool. Suck your own dick. Like, just some of us are trying to win traffic over here, man. Why are you taking this so long? Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not gonna say some of the things that have come to mind when I've dealt with these guys, but like it's basically like, oh, I didn't realize a tour de very rude word was going on. You know what I mean? Like it's just,
I know what word it is, and
because you're from the Midwest too.
And
Yeah,
I'm
exactly,
gonna start. Well, maybe I know what the word is, but I'm definitely gonna start saying that to the Lycra pants.
It's not a racial slur. I'll tell you that much. It's not. It's just.
I'm thinking a word that is okay to say in Australia.
Well, no, I think I would just say that one. But yeah, you would just get that one misinterpreted in the United States as being really misogynist. What I would say is it's one of those things where I feel like you have to, my approach has always been like, you got to kind of live and let live, and you have to understand that like as a cyclist, you always have to yield to pedestrians, even if they're being stupid. A lot of cyclists gets really, really bent out of shape about this.
If there's one thing that that cyclists and drivers can be the muscly handshake thing on is fucking pedestrians. Like,
yeah, I mean,
the light, it says don't walk, but I'm going to walk, but also I'm not going to rush because I've decided I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to at least be polite and pick up my speed to cross in front of you, even though I know you have the light green. Like, what the fuck, dude? You have nothing. You have nothing protecting you.
One time, people were just decided to cross in a group, like when I had prior, like the right of way, when the light was green for bikes and the light was red for pedestrians. And I was just like, light's green for me. I've got priority. And they just started hooting like monkeys at me. And I was just sort of like, but if I put my bike tire up your ass, like you're going to be mad at like, oh, crazy cyclist ran people over. That's another thing too, is like, in Britain, like nothing can escape the right-wing media culture war, and like hating cyclists and saying you should have the right to run cyclists over is just sort of like a thing.
Sure.
America has this too. It just doesn't really exist in the same way in countries that where like cycle commuting is a common thing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have as many cyclists, at least not around me. I'm sure.
But in the Midwest, you have the guy who's cycling because he's lost his license from too many DUIs, and like that's a whole different vibe.
Right. You're not getting if you're in fucking Omaha, Nebraska, you're not really bicycling anywhere because it's just the infrastructure is not there for it.
I cycled in fucking Anchorage, Alaska, dude.
Okay,
believe me.
Yeah, Anchorage, Alaska for sure, because Alaska has like what 200,000 people living in it. Like,
well, no, Alaska has 600,000 people living in it, and like 300,000 of them live in the greater Anchorage area.
All right,
it's not a big city, but it's more like a mid-sized, large town, like Bloomington, Indiana, when school's in session is about 120,000 people.
Yeah, but
Anchorage feels like a bigger city than Bloomington for sure.
Anchorage also, it feels like that's a place where there's about 8 months out of the year that you can't really cycle.
Yeah, I mean, you can cycle on the roads, and people do in the wintertime, but like you got to have the right gear, and it's really dangerous. One of the reasons why it's really dangerous is because when it gets to like fully sub-zero, all of the condensation from vehicles' tailpipes comes out as just water on the street and turns into black ice. So like any busy intersection is going to have just like ice waffle in the middle of it, and like it's dangerous for cars. You can imagine it's going to be really dangerous for bikes. You have to ride with studded snow tires and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like it's and people, the like fat tire bikes are more common too, because like it's kind of a necessity. It's dangerous.
You need that traction.
You're not going to be out there on like your like a summer tires road bike with really narrow tires, like a what's it called, I can't remember. I don't know the brands well enough to be, because I'm just not enough of a cycle guy, but in my heart, you know what you're talking about. Yeah, man. It's funny. I bring it up just because it's like, I think as annoying as it can be sometimes, like dealing with that stuff, I do think that there's a degree of kind of, if you put your head in the right place, doing something like cycling can be a good exercise in sort of learning some patience, in the sense that like certain things, like, yeah, it's stupid and it's annoying, but it's like, but in the interest of like your safety and everyone else's safety and your own sanity, you kind of have to let shit go. I was thinking about that on the ride in earlier. I was just like, yeah, like you can stay mad at people about this stuff, but like one of the funny things about it is when you cycle commute is that like you will encounter lots of dangerous things that would be hugely problematic for you if you don't notice them. You have to pay attention in advance, because like at the end of the day, you will potentially put a ding in a car's hood. You will damage the car in a mild way, but it will kill you or hurt you or destroy your bike at a minimum.
Right.
And if you hit a pedestrian going fast, you might kill them. It does happen. It's very rare. The British media love to talk about it, to be like, cyclists are just as dangerous as cars, and also they should be illegal. But like, cars kill more people in one day than cyclists have killed in the last decade.
Sure.
Like it's one of those things. But I do think like in terms of, it's weird. I'm gonna say it's humbling, because obviously like the Lycra guys are not particularly humble. But I think that there's a way to make it kind of like, I don't know, almost like meditation in a way. Like you have to pay attention. You're not zoning out or anything, but like a kind of sort of, I have to be ready to give way. I have to be ready to react. I am vulnerable. I am exposed in a way that a car's not. And I don't know, it can be good for you.
Yeah, you can't be an angry bicyclist, I don't think.
I beg to fucking differ. I have seen many of those. You can.
Okay.
But it's not a good idea.
You shouldn't be, because like it's like being mad online. Like, who are you owning but yourself at this point? Like, if you're an angry bicyclist, you're going to be angry to the wrong person, or you're going to be so angry that you're not paying attention to something, and then you're going to fuck somebody else up, or you're more than likely going to fuck yourself up. So like, you gotta, like, as you said, bicycling seems like one of those, especially in an urban setting, an urban environment, it seems like one of those things where you have to kind of center yourself, and you have to be ready for everybody else to be a huge dumbass, and you have to be okay with the fact that, look, people are going to be huge dumbasses no matter what. There's nothing that I can do to stop that. I can, however, take a look at what's going on around me. I can keep an eye on the traffic around me and everything, and have a nice ride in, because I would love, like, I would love to get like a little, I rode one of the Lime scooters, little rental scooters around here to go pick up my car a couple months ago from the shop.
Yeah.
I love it. I live in a small like neighborhood that you can ride around on a bike, you can ride around on a scooter, and it's, you know, I'm not jumping on the highway, obviously. I'm not trying to commute to my job, which is a 20-minute drive away, but I can, you know, hit the little spots in the neighborhood. I can go to the little corner store.
When I lived in Anchorage, I couldn't cycle commute, for example, to Fort Richardson without it being like, I need to leave almost 90 minutes before I have to be at PT.
Exactly.
But I could get around on the weekends. The trail system in the park was really amazing for getting around. I did actually cycle when I lived in Eagle River. I cycled to work one time, but it was more because my car was in the shop. And so it was like, I planned well in advance that I was going to be cycling to work that day, because it was like a, 10 or 11 mile ride. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, also, I was an insane Army captain, so like I was in good enough shape that I could add 22 miles of cycling, mostly on like a walking path sidewalk, not in traffic, to my morning routine, and that wasn't, or my daily exercise routine, and that wasn't going to put me in fucking traction for a week the way it would now.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, my round trip when I cycle here is 11 miles, but like I have been doing this for years, so I built up to that.
Yeah, it's a good exercise. I had when my daughter
I have a pedal assist electric bike. I mean, it's still a workout, but it's not. I mean,
I would love to get an electric bike, or maybe one of the little 49 cubic centimeter Vespas or whatever that I see all the time around here. Because let me tell you, all the rich fucks around us now have golf carts, which I absolutely hate.
Yeah, isn't that such a like white suburban Republican thing? That just drive around in golf carts all the time.
My wife was saying that she was at Target, and there was a woman that had like 3 kids in tow. The oldest of them probably about 7 years old, and the kids were being rambunctious. It's Target, it's whatever. But my wife saw this woman piling her kids and her groceries into a golf cart to drive home. It's like, there's no seatbelts in these things. There's no rollover cage on these things. And like, look, I understand with the Vespa that I also don't have those things. You don't have those things in an electric scooter, but I feel like the golf cart is giving too much to people. And like, it's bigger than a bike, so it's harder to get around, but it's not as big as a car or safe as a car. And I don't know, like, you could just fall out of those fucking, like, people fall out of those things and die not all the time, but like enough times that it's like, you need to put fucking seatbelts in here.
So I don't know if I ever told you the story that we had golf carts and John Deere Gators at Sotocano Air Base in Honduras. Because
I
did some hot.
I whipped some shitties in a golf cart on Sotocano myself.
I didn't know you'd been to Sotocano. Yeah, so I was at Sotocano for 6 months in 2011.
I was there. When was I was there in? I want to say it was before Iraq, so 2005 or 2006 or 2007.
Yeah, and so. When I was there, they had purchased these very, very expensive electric golf carts for the protocol team to drive the task force commander around, and obviously like any dignitaries, guests, etc. And the colonel or the general's driver fucking went to one of the on-post bars and got hammered and tried to drive drunk and got caught. Basically, the MP saw him driving erratically and tried to flag him down. And he tried to run from them and drove into a ditch and then through a fence that ripped the windshield off. So for a week, it was like the crime scene. This thing was just fucking parked there, just ripped. And I was just like, man, soldiers in an enclosed base, you're not allowed to leave where no one has cars and only golf carts. Soldiers are still managing to get DUIs.
Still managing. You can never take Joe out of the army, man.
Oh, I saw people, I was just, as a side note, saying we have no idea at this point when we're recording on Tuesday who Kamala Harris's VP pick is going to be, but one of the sort of Minnesota Republicans, famously a successful breed of politician, was trying to go on about how Tim Walz had a DUI, in
the 90s,
where he claimed that he pretended to be deaf to try to get out of it. It turned out that actually he had hearing loss from being an NCO, a guard artillery NCO for 24 years, and it was later surgically corrected. And the judge apparently admonished the cops for not recognizing that he had hearing loss when trying to administer a test. So it's not the story. He was over the limit, but he was apparently slightly over the limit when the limit was 0.1. So it's one of those things. But it's just funny to me because they bring it up. It's drunk driving is obviously a huge problem. And there's a reason why we lowered the limit from 0.1 to 0.08. But I was like, I'm sorry, but you've now just made this man relatable to even more American voters.
Oh, a Midwesterner with a DWI. Yeah.
It's like, oh, he had a DUI and he tried to recreate the scene from Tommy Boy about, oh no, the bees. Yeah. They're gonna love it. The only state they're not gonna win in the electoral college is Utah. I'm sorry. I'm exaggerating, but right. I just found it very funny.
Now, had he been arrested with a bag full of crumble cookies, then you would have taken Utah. But
Laura Bush, granted not the elected politician, but the wife of the two-term president, killed a guy drunk driving. She ran it, fucking crashed a car and killed a guy. Anyway, that's American politics. I did find that very funny. This man from the Midwest, high school football coach who coached the team to state champions from being perpetual losers, was the faculty sponsor of a gay straight alliance in the 90s when that was bad for your career, but did it because he believed in it, was a guard NCO for 24 years, is not a lawyer. Fucking people just seem to love this guy. It's but we have dirt on him. He drove 96 in a 55 in Nebraska, blasting fucking Hold On Loosely by 38 Special, 6 beers deep. And it's what a freak. And every dude in America over 35 is I've been there, brother. I felt the wind in my hair. I know what it is.
Were you commiserating? Were you celebrating? It don't matter because I was there.
Oh man, exactly. I was explaining this to a friend of mine here in Britain. I'm not a wise man, but I do know America.
Yeah. I'm so I've never had a DUI, but a DUI is not something that I'm immediately oh well, this guy is not trustworthy. He can't be. I mean, especially in the 90s. Holy shit.
Yeah,
I have never gotten a DUI. That does not mean that I have not driven under the influence.
Yeah, I would say the thing about it is that the culture around it has changed a lot, and we joke about it, but getting DUIs because you think you're good to drive and you're obviously not, buzz driving, that kind of thing. That was a huge thing, and I think that the culture has changed in the sense that my mom had a boss years ago who when around the time he got his first DUI, it's haha, is one of the boys, and by the time he got his third DUI, he got fired from a board position at a Fortune 500 company because it became serious.
Yeah, it's
Indiana started introducing felony DUIs.
You get one.
And also on one hand, Midwest drunk driving is a bit of a joke for us, because of the sort of the cultural lore, if you will. But also I had friends from home who died because drunk drivers hit them. I had a friend or classmate that I knew decently well who killed people driving drunk. I knew a guy who went to prison for a long time because he got on his third DUI. He very grievously injured a family. It's not funny objectively, but culturally speaking, the degree to which, especially in the 90s, it was just not treated.
We didn't have Uber. What do you want me to do? Call a cab?
We didn't have Uber.
It's going to take cabs. 45 minutes for a cab to get to me.
The blood alcohol content limit was 0.1, which based on the metrics we were taught in school, for a normal sized adult male is equivalent of drinking 5 beers. Yeah. So what they're saying is, culturally speaking, the law was you were good to drive if you were 5 beers or fewer.
Yeah, don't do the full sixer and you'll be fine.
Exactly. 6 beers is too many unless you wait an hour.
Or if you had an extra 50 pounds on you.
We are from, culturally speaking, there's a generational sea change that said that if you drank 6 beers or fewer, that's enough that you'll be good to drive.
Yeah.
Like I remember riding with my mom's friend who like a coworker who was taking us home because I'd gone fishing with him and his sons. And like he drove me home. I was probably 10 or 11, not wearing a seatbelt, drinking a beer while driving on like country roads in New Mexico. It was a road soda, as he called it.
Right.
Like
you have one, as long as it's your first one, that's okay. You have one.
It's just, I was gonna say, I mean, it's just a thing that existed. Yeah. So do we have time to do a quick Ask a Dad, or do you need to
run? Do. This is an interesting one. It says, do you have a dad buddy, as in another dad you don't really know, but always see and have friendly interactions with at your child's activities and social outings? And I guess you've been dropping your daughter off at day camp and do activities. So I was wondering, do you have a dad that you see kind of regularly?
There's one guy. It's very funny. Like we just say hi to each other. We hold the door because he's got his daughter's probably about 2-ish. Mm-hmm. And so like, and she can sometimes be in her feelings about going to daycare.
Sure.
So we just recognize each other and say hi. It's also very funny because I think one of the first times I held the door and saw them, his daughter gave me the most little kid mean mug I've ever had in my life. Just fully like, what are you, who are you, and what are you doing here? Now she recognizes me. I'm not gonna say she's like hi or nice, but she doesn't mean mug me, but she does seem to like my daughter. So that's at least good.
Yeah.
The toddlers really seem to like my daughter a lot. And it's really cute to see them interact.
Toddlers like little babies.
They really do.
Yeah. We have, so my daughter does Irish dance, and I always volunteer. Like, so when her school is putting on a competition, they need people to come and put stages together. So there's all these like big plywood stages that have to be bolted and screwed together. During St. Patrick's Day, there's a whole float that has to be put together. So, and while this school has probably, I would say, 100 kids that, mostly girls, there are some boys who go to dance, to do dancing there, I only see like the same 4 or 5 other dads doing the work. So I have gotten a good rapport with some of them, and I see them at the competitions and we say hi and we chat and everything. But yeah, because it's like I'm building stuff with these guys, so I'm now bonding with them, and they're, of course, they're all really, really cool dudes. But when we had the dance school that she goes to had I think it was end of a big competition. They had a big party and everything, and I met a lot of dads who I've never met before, but like the 3 or 4 people that I see all the time, I hung out with them, introduced them to my wife and everything. So I am like gaining that kind of, I know, dad friendship where it's we can say, that like we can say hi to each other. I don't need to know everything about you, but also I know that if shit went down for whatever reason, I know it's like these are dudes who are going to do something about it. I guess I just, when you have that kind of relationship where like, yes, you and I, we know each other, we know each other's first names, and like that is such a huge, like a huge jump in a relationship. Like just even having it, like I'm also going to talk about, we do a vendor event every month at our science center, and we're next to a table where a guy sells handmade headbands, and we sat next to him. I've seen him, I've known of him for like probably 8 or 9 months at this point in time, but like this last month is the first time that we actually spoke and exchanged words, and like that opens up so much right there. So and I know sometimes we get questions about how do you make friends as an adult, how as a dad in your 30s or 40s, how do you make friends? And like really you just got to talk to somebody, because there's our concept of making friends is like, as a kid you got interests and you hang out and you're always kind of thrown into these same situations or whatnot, but at the same time I feel like I'm gaining a lot of relationships with other dads just by showing up, saying hi, learning people's names, and then the relationship kind of builds from that. So it is that dad buddy where I don't really know them, but every time I see them, I get to know them a little bit more. So it's really interesting because, again, like I don't want more friends than I already have, but also I understand that sometimes friends just happen, especially if you're all kind of thrown in the same situation. It's just like, it's like the army. When you see soldiers going out, a group of soldiers going out together, you've got cowboy soldier, you've got hip hop soldier, you've got button down shirt and khaki soldier, and they're all best friends and they're all going to the same place and they're all dressed differently. But that's the only time you're going to see that kind of thing, because they're all thrown into the same situation. They're friends because of that, and that your relationship kind of expands from there. So
you're basically saying that being a dad and being friends with their dad and doing activities is sort of like you end up having like like troop friendships amongst dads.
Yeah, you do. You because you're all thrown into, you know, a situation where not necessarily like I don't want to be here. I don't want to be at this dance competition. I do. I want to be there. I want to support my daughter. My daughter got 2 first place medals at her last one, so you know, good on her. But yeah, it is a like I in general probably would not talk to these people unless we had this one thing in common, and then you know from there it kind of billows out, and you become friends. You have a better relationship because you're all kind of thrown into this thing. You're like, well, we're all here. We all have to deal with it, so we might as well make the most of it.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it makes sense. Like I said, for me, it's not really that, but also my daughter's not even a year old. Year old. Now she just turned recently, just got it to be 11 months. So,
Ooh, we're almost
closing
there.
in on a year. I can't believe it. And like toddler vibes increasing exponentially every day.
Yeah,
so.
she's going to start running. She's going to start...
She's crawling a lot. She's pulling herself up on things. Like I actually, one of the packages I got yesterday at the studio was a box of mending plates to use to connect some stuff like in a sort of furniture thing so that you can't pull it piece at a time on top
anchors.
of yourself. So
yeah, you need those.
Yeah. Learning all about it. But I was going to say, man, it's great talking to you.
Yeah.
And you know, I'll report in because I have 3 nights of doing live shows for Kill James Bond, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night this weekend, and then the next week I have to fly to Edinburgh to do a show and then come back and then literally pack up everything and go to Geneva.
Yeah.
Make it work.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Hopefully we'll be able to get you on, but if not, we'll find some stuff. We'll find some content.
Yeah,
We'll find some content for the hogs.
I don't know if I'll be able to record the first day or second day that I'm there, but I do think that within a little bit of time I should be good to go. So we'll make it work.
Yeah, we got it. I've got some stuff that we're gonna some interviews that I want to do. I've got some people to reach out to. So thank you all for listening. If you're not aware yet, as we've been saying, this is What a Hell of a Way to Dad. We are brand changing a little bit, but the content is pretty much going to stay the same. But new website, whatahellofawaytodad.com. It's going to have, the store has been moved over to there. It's got a few other things to it. It's going to have an apparel shop as well. So a lot of our designs are going to be on t-shirts, hats, and things like that. Plus new designs are going to be coming every week, as well as something that I'm starting up called the Podcast Attic. I really love thrifting stuff, and it's partially going to be maybe a little bit of an eBay store of reselling, but partially going to be I found something really cool for pretty cheap, and I'm going to sell it online for slightly more, but also fairly cheap. I got a lot of old coffee mugs, and I found some old Army beer steins and some old ashtrays too. I found a lot of really good stuff. So I'm going to have a lot of cool things that are out there in the store because we can do this. We can make this whatever we want and sell cool things. And I know that you guys have your Lions has stuff going on. So I'm really excited about the changes and that we're making. I'm glad that we're not going to be pigeonholing ourselves into just military. Actually, a buddy of mine from Iraq just reached out to me, and he was just like, "Oh, I ran across your podcast. I wanted to see if you're the same Francis Horton." And he's actually going to be doing production for the Special Forces podcast. I guess there's a SOCOM. Oh, wow. There's a SOCOM podcast. So he was looking up military podcasts and like, well, I don't know. Yeah, I was like, look, it's mostly dad content now, but if you go back a couple years, you're gonna hear a lot of things about how the military sucks. So I don't know how you're gonna feel about that. But he was always a good dude, and he I'm looking forward to him listening and doing some stuff with him. Maybe we'll see. So, but yeah.
All right, man. It's a pleasure speaking to you, and we'll speak to everyone else next week.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.